Hello ladies, gentlemen and everybody in between, welcome on in to the channel. My name is of course the Kexman, and today we're going to be taking a look at the War Within Alpha, specifically the very first week. We've seen the Isle of Dorn, and honestly it's a pretty spectacular start to the expansion. In today's video we will be going through my thoughts, my feedback, how I realistically felt about the Isle of Dorn zone as a whole. It's kind of a stream of consciousness thing, so consider this not only a sort of review, but also feedback on the zone and potential improvements or changes that could be made to the opening of War Within. So without further ado, let's take a look. So to get this out of the way right at the start, the Isle of Dorn is absolutely spectacular. Wide open plains that when you're dragon riding around, or dynamic flying as it's now known, is an absolute treat. Just zooming through these trees, through these rocky outcroppings, it is so much fun. It is truly a lot of fun. Not only that, but it has an incredible main city. Dornagal is up there with some of the best cities that have been imagined in World of Warcraft. Not only does it have instantly recognizable architecture, not only is it laid out relatively easy to understand, but at the same time, it feels like something we haven't really seen before. It's almost like a version of Ironforge that has splintered off and lived its own life above ground. On top of that, you also have certain areas around the Isle that, again, make sense. The Meadery is a very, very large building, but also right next to what is effectively a large area covered in bees. It makes sense to have the Meadery next to where the bees are, considering honey is one of the main components of mead. On top of that, you also have the Morning Rise, a place where the Earthen can go and, as the name suggests, mourn their dead. Now, there is a quest line that does involve this area, we'll get into that a little bit later, that is absolutely spectacular. But as you're dynamic flying around the Isle of Dorn and you suddenly come across this giant area that is covered in what is effectively graves, it is stunning. You want to learn more about this area. And speaking of learning more about areas, you also have the three shields, which seem to have a couple of pieces of Titan tech placed around them. We don't exactly know why these pieces are here. There's a dig site that also has some very reminiscent pieces of Titan tech. Seems similar to Uldaman. If you cast your minds way back to the original Uldaman, very, very reminiscent of that. So I'm wondering if we're going to get a story that plays alongside that. Nothing in the alpha as of yet, but again, as an entire area, the Isle of Dorn, spectacular. Not to mention the fact that there is a high-level area in the eastern part of the zone, which is the Meadery, alongside a high-level area in the western part of the zone, which is a mountain of pale blue crystals. There's more story here than we already have been shown during the alpha, and I'm very, very excited to get stuck into this as we get further into the alpha and into the War Within expansion. And speaking of quest lines, now as with any alpha, these quests can be changed, these quests can be altered, and our experience on the alpha is also slightly different. We don't have cutscenes. There are certain things that are missing that give us context for certain quests further down the line. That being said, the Isle of Dorn questline and the characters that are introduced are absolutely enjoyable. I wouldn't say the questline takes many risks. There's nothing here that is especially new, not only in questing, but also in storytelling. However, it's a charm to play through these quests. The characters that are introduced are absolutely fantastic. Characters like Baelgrim, characters like, you know, we get a lot more from Moira as well, Moira Thracian, which is absolutely fantastic. Edelgon is an absolute treat when we head over to Freywold Village. The most important part of these quests for me is you very, very quickly get an understanding for Earthen lifestyle, for the way that the Earthen go about their daily lives, which is something that I was initially worried about going into this, that they would just be thrust towards us as if we'd known them for years and years. However, they take great care in explaining exactly who the Earthen are, what their history is, and the relationships between the characters are shown to be something that is easy to understand, but there's a lot more nuance behind them as well, which I think is very, very good to have in an opening area for a expansion, because it opens up the opportunity for them to do more down the road. Obviously, I won't get too much into spoilers for this. I'd like you folks to experience it for yourself if you get alpha access or when the expansion does come out. However, I will say that when that opportunity does arise, you won't regret playing through these. However, for me, the absolute highlight of questing through Isle of Dorn are the side quests, such as the 7 soldiers with Agartha, that effectively is her recruiting soldiers to help at the Glimmering Shore, where there are invading Gorloks, and your aid in that, whether that be getting weapons for these new soldiers, or whether it be actively helping them push back the invading forces of the Gorloks. It is an absolute treat and one that I thoroughly enjoyed. On top of that, we also have recurring characters like Renan Koran. Some of you may remember them from Zaralek Caverns, and they actively play a part in 3 Shields and the Titan artifacts that are placed there, which, again, no spoilers, but definitely leaves a breadcrumb for something to appear later on down the line. However, the crowning achievement of this area is the questline that takes place in the Morning Rise. It involves Corgran and their apprentice Atargo. Now, Corgran is the caretaker of Morning Rise, and without getting too heavily into spoilers, it deals with their inevitable shutdown, which is what the Earthen effectively call death, and them passing on their duties. There's a little bit more to it though, and this questline definitely elicited a feeling of sorrow from me personally, simply because the questline seems to deal with not only Atargo coming to terms with the loss of their caretaker and effectively their master, but also it seemed to have references to dementia in this, which is one of the most painful ways that you can lose somebody that you care about. The questline definitely felt as though it was a personal achievement or a personal goal of one of the developers in being able to get this feeling across, and they absolutely nailed it. If you get the opportunity to play this questline and read the quest text, please do. Those of you that have had a similar experience will be able to notice the feelings that are coming through this questline, and it is an absolute beaut. Now, the 2 dungeons that we have in this alpha build, again, both in the Isle of Dorn, are the Rookery, which is the first dungeon you will do in the expansion, and a max level dungeon, the Cinder Bru Meer. As the names suggest, they definitely have 2 very different feelings. The Rookery is effectively the garrison of the Storm Riders for the Earthen, and the Cinder Bru Meer is where they make mead. Surprise, surprise. One thing that I noted about both of these dungeons is that they feature rather a lot of trash in between the bosses. Now, I don't know if we're going to have Fortified and Tyrannical when we get into Mythic Plus, but if I'm going to say anything right now, it is that I hope we do not. I think Fortified and Tyrannical, when we are in Mythic Plus, are complete nothing burgers. They are relics of the past. I don't believe we need them, especially with the recent changes to Mythic Plus that we have seen in retail. And honestly, I think if we do have Fortified when these dungeons are out, a lot of people are not going to do these, simply because of A, the amount, and B, some of the abilities that these dungeons have. The Rookery as a dungeon is effectively a very heavily void-influenced area. Again, we don't have much story going into these. We don't have any cutscenes. We're not 100% certain on what happens in these areas in the alpha at the moment, so that is going to change. I will be taking a closer look at bosses. I will be taking a closer look at abilities when we get towards the actual dungeon testing phase of Mythic Plus in the alpha, because I feel as though that is the best time for us to really take a look at how these dungeons play. However, as it currently stands, the Rookery is shaping up to be a very interesting dungeon. I think the final area and the final boss in the Voidstone Monstrosity could potentially cause issues for a lot of groups in those opening weeks. However, for my money, the boss I really enjoyed the most during this was Stormguard Goran. I think there's a lot of potential here to have a pretty hectic boss fight. There are void tornadoes, there are gravity wells. It's just a lot of fun. Continuing on with the dungeons, the Cinder Bru Meer again doesn't really have much story attached to it. Nothing in the alpha currently gives us an idea of what is happening. However, when you zone into the Cinder Bru Meer, it seems to have been taken over by the Venture Company, which could give us some interesting stuff leading into maybe the future of the War Within. Maybe we will finally get the Goblin Raid that we have all been wanting. However, this dungeon is absolutely unbelievable, and that pun is deliberate because there are bees everywhere. Even one of the bosses themselves effectively rides a bee in battle, and you have to deal with the bee ads that come along with it in Bank Buzzbee. Again, for my money, the best boss in here is the final one, Goldie Baronbottom. It seems to be an updated version of the Saboteur Kiptalak fight from Mists of Pandaria in the Gate of the Setting Sun dungeon, for those of you that are as old as I am. It's excellent. It does feel as though, again, on Mythic, this fight could be absolutely insanity. I'm very, very excited for it. And if they do have Tyrannical and Fortified in the Mythic Plus, again, we hope they don't, this fight could be one of the most impressive ones for the high-end players to complete. Out of the two dungeons, I think Cinder Bru Meer is my favorite. I prefer the setting, I prefer the bosses, I prefer the trash, but that isn't to suggest that the Rookery is terrible either. So then, closing thoughts on the Isle of Dorn. For me, it's an incredible opening area. I feel as though there are a lot of opportunities for not only current expansion content. We don't know what the quest lines are going to be when we hit level 80, as we've mentioned. The Cinder Bru Meer seems to have a quest line attributed to it at max level, but also the opportunity to do stuff later down the line. There is a lot of area, a lot of movement here that can really help some of the storylines in 11.1, 11.2, or even if we're in a different expansion, we could easily come back to the Isle of Dorn. The quest lines are pretty standard, to be honest with you. There's nothing there that I would say is incredibly new or shocking, but they do their job of introducing you to the characters of the Earthen, to the society of the Earthen. The side quests are where, for me, the major meat of the zone is where we really start to get involved with some of the characters, deep dive into some of them. The dungeons, I think, are pretty good. Again, the Rookery, nothing special. Cinder Bru Meer, I think, is the better of the two, but both entirely passable on what they do. And there's a lot of stuff here that I'm excited for. We don't even mention the delves. I will be doing a video on delves later on down the line, but so far the War Within is off to an incredible start with the Isle of Dorn. I'm very excited to see where we go next, not only in the alpha, but also in the Isle of Dorn and the Earthen storyline as a whole as well. My name has been the Kexman, and if you folks have enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, let me know your thoughts on the opening of the alpha so far down below. Be sure to head over to my channel on Twitch, twitch.tv/thekexman, where you can see all of my reactions and feelings live as the alphas drop. Thank you for listening, ladies, gentlemen, and everybody in between. I'll see you next time.